How goes it? It's Matt here. I hope you're doing well. I'm currently sat in the back of my house looking out at the garden. It's in a room that's been recently renovated, so it's kind of echoey. So to stop that sort of echo from happening and to make it an acceptable room noise, I've got a clothes horse full of towels, the curtains hung over the clothes horse. I've got a fishing rod and a tripod holding up a blanket, and I'm sat in a velvet chair next to the curtain as close as possible. And I think it's pretty tranquil out there at the moment. I feel very chill. But today I wanted to talk about someone who casts a long shadow over anyone who's Welsh, a Welsh poet like myself, who feels even more resonant. Or to be honest, the way that he shaped the image of rock and roll stars over the years, it feels like Bob Dylan took his last name, his stage name, Bob Dylan, from Dylan Thomas. Almost mythical in stature. You think of Dylan Thomas, you think of the booze. You think of the poetry that is modernist poetry that's complex, with some that are very direct, that we're going to talk about today, because I've been doing the most odd thing. I've been hanging out in the comment sections of Dylan Thomas videos on YouTube, reading the comments, finding the reactions to his poetry. He's 70 years gone, yet people are still in comment sections flooding them. Obviously, mostly one poem, and that's the one we're going to go through today, because I think every fucker gets it wrong. But once I explain this about probably one of the most famous poems in the world, I think this poem will be better in your head than it is now. I think you think of it on the surface like I once did, and if I just add this little tinge to it, this ain't an original take. I got this from a professor. I applied his take onto then these comment sections, because I think everyone in general views this poem in a skewed way. Should we just give it a read? Probably one of the most famous poems of all time. Do not go gentle into that good night. Stunning, absolutely stunning poem. Not many people touch this bloke. Do not go gentle into that good night. Old age should burn and rave at close of day. Rage against the dying of the light. Though wise men at their end know dark is right, because their words had fought no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. Good men, the last wave by, crying how bright. Their frail deeds might have danced in a green bay. Rage against the dying of the light. Wild men, who caught and sang the sun in flight, and learned too late, they grieved it on its way. Do not go gentle into that good night. Grave men, near death, who see with blinding sight, blind eyes could blaze like meteors and be gay. Rage against the dying of the light. And you, my father, there on the sad height, curse, bless me now with your fierce tears, I pray. Do not go gentle into that good night. Rage against the dying of the light. Now, Dylan wrote that to his dad, who was dying on his deathbed a year before Dylan died himself. Now, I've seen this poem used so many times. I turned up to the rugby and they used it. Oh my God, the irony. If you know anything about Welsh rugby, you don't need to know much. It's just in chaos, and it's just dawned on me. But this poem is all through Welsh culture. It's through world culture, but we can't pretend we don't hang on to it in such a big way here. And before I went to see Wales. What match did I see? I can't remember. Japan last year. They played this. And what I'm going to tell, I want you to hold that in your head. Imagine something that's struggling, that thinks that this is a powerful thing to put before a match because of everyone's misreading it. And at the end of this, the irony of it is going to be really fucking funny. So you would have heard this poem. It's been used in motivational speeches. It's been used in movies to show man often, especially in the nothingness of space or against the natural world, raging, pushing, ploughing on when there's nothing left. And that's how everyone kind of reads it in general. And this professor, I listened to him and he said something. He said, have you ever thought that some people just want to die? And it was like the scales fell from my eyes. Now, we can take Dylan Thomas's dad out of it in his relationship, right? Have a think about the poem for a second, more than you usually would. This is someone saying, rage, rage against the dying of the light. That sounds motivational, doesn't it? On the face of it. I've always taken it as that. Well, think about who's saying that. It's actually a poem of complete weakness. A poem of complete desperation. Of scared of what happens when the other thing goes. It's a poem of terror. Dylan Thomas is begging his father to live. People who use this are begging the thing to live, to work. And I find it really ironic that the people often using this poem are at their most desperate times. But I don't think they see it as desperate. They see it as motivation. But really, it's normally used at a point of weakness. Dylan Thomas begging his father. Now, Dylan Thomas's father, he wasn't Christian. He was atheist or agnostic. So Dylan actually wrote a few poems, including this one, for his father as he was dying, so he didn't have to just read Christian verses or anything like that. And that secular nature of it even adds an extra thing with people who often use it, not all the time, but people who often use it. This is where the comment sections come in. They're often talking about how futile man is, how we're a speck of dust on a rock in an abyss. And they're thinking like that. I see a lot of comments that are about raging against nature. It's about man pushing forward. It's projecting strength, but all those comments come from incredible points of weakness, the ones that are like that anyway. And I think there's something kind of beautiful about that. So the reason I've been hanging on these comment sections, the people on these comment sections are doing what Dylan was doing, unironically. But don't get me wrong, I think Dylan knew what he was doing anyway. I'll open back up this omnibus of Dylan Thomas poems I've got. My most read poetry book in the house, actually. And we must always remember that line. Though wise men at their end know dark is right. Because their words had forked no lightning, they do not go gentle into that good night. But I think there's something about that line. Wise men at their end know dark is right. I don't think he's unaware of the fact of what he's doing is begging. I just think he's doing it anyway. But when I went through these comment sections and saw these comments, some of them, honestly, this is where it gets crazy. Some of them very racist. Saying they will not replace us. People talking about using like MAGA, Make America Great Again. People, because they're using that, it's a desperate plea. One person had written, remember August 20th, 2021, Make America Great Again. And that was written just after that point. August, January, whatever month. And it was, again, people desperately clinging on to hope. but using that word rage and then reading the poem wrong. Because let's not beat around the bush. That is one of the most baller lines in all of poetry. That kind of poem, you might go, wow, why is he repeating it the way he does? It's called a villanelle, right? Now, a villanelle is a poem that repeats 2 lines a bunch of times, then has a strict rhyming structure, right? So the 2 lines are "Do not go gentle into that good night" and "Rage, rage, rage against the dying of the light." Or "Rage, rage," sorry. So what I did as a joke, so I was thinking about this. I was thinking about the fact that Dylan is begging. And I thought about the fact of all these commenters under the YouTube video all begging. And I just thought something. Sometimes in your life, there's someone older in your family or someone you've known who's older. And they just go, it's my time. They want to rest. They've done a lot. And I came up with a funny title and then I went, no, do you know what? I'm just going to do this. I've written a poem in response called "I Just Want to Die." All right. And what it is, I was exploring those feelings of actually coming to the end and not raging. Doing something a bit different, you know, like, because sometimes not even through death or anything like that, because it can be very tragic and the opposite way around. But sometimes you just say, and it can be anything in your life, I've just got to let it go. It's done. Or we move on to the next thing. We don't cling on. So I've written this in that villanelle style. I've used the same rhyming structure. I've tried to make it feel like a response to the poem rather than just a completely different poem in what's called. So this is called "I Just Want to Die." All right? Let me close my eyes and see the light. My bones are old, my joints give way. I just want to die. All right? I've heard the blackbird silhouetted by moonlight, read the books acted in the plays. Let me close my eyes and see the light. In my life I dreamed of great heights, but at this bed I surround myself with mundane. I just want to die. All right? To those whose arguments I did ignite, sorry is my last exhale. Let me close my eyes and see the light. I'm spent, near death, but see with blinding sight. Every smile, every tear, people walking their own way. I just want to die. All right? And like your father, at his height, saw the suns rise, grandchildren play. Let me close my eyes and see the light. I just want to die. All right? But exploring those feelings and getting to the end with that poem, I did feel the melancholy. I did feel those feelings of getting to the end, slowing down. And it felt both sad, but okay, you know? Not everything has to be tragic. I will say the funniest comment, I was scrolling down all the comments, and someone put a quote of something like, "Get out of my swamp," Shrek. And the idea of Shrek raging against all the people who have been dumped in his swamp. So what we're going to do, I've written another one, which is a bit of a laugh, yeah? I'm not sure about you, but have you ever seen brambles on the side of a field? Big, jagged teeth on them, blackberries that are gorgeous. Well, one time I was listening to a farmer, and he said, brambles, are a carnivorous plant. And I was like, what? It doesn't have a mouth like a Venus flytrap. It doesn't have one of those kind of bucket things. Do you know the ones with the sticky, like flies that come on and it's slippery and then sticky at the bottom and it absorbs the fly into itself? There's nothing like that. What do you mean it's a carnivorous plant? And then he said, I've seen them eat sheep. Huh? And then after that, my mum lived a bit more out in the sticks for a while. She lived right surrounded by farmers. And we were going for a walk one day, and I could hear from a bush bleating from a sheep. And I looked in through this little fence, and a lamb had got through the fence and was stuck in the brambles. The poor bloody thing. So I jumped in the bush, untangled this lamb, and chucked it back out on the field. And it ran over to its mother. And this is a short poem about that. It's called Brambles Are a Carnivorous Plant. I saw a sheep stuck in a bramble bush. Its wool was knotted in the thorns. Its cry was dry with fear. I jumped in, untangled the poor terrified animal, chucked it out into the farmer's field. The thorns caught my t-shirt, dragged my trousers towards its roots, threatened my throat with 1,000 blades. I looked out. The sheep looked back. I swear I heard the little woolly cunt laugh as it pranced away. Because I got stuck in the fucking bramble bush. It was awful. I got stuck in there. I had to drag myself out. It ripped my t-shirt. I had to get a tetanus shot because of so many. It stuck all... I was picking them out my body. It had made big gashes. It was awful. And I watched that little sheep and I thought, you little bastard. And I wanted to finish on this, right? There's been something... You may not have seen, I think I've seen this online because I'm a man. And I think this is targeted towards men. Yeah. So if you haven't seen this, you're stepping into another side. But you might have seen this stuff. I was getting recommended videos of something called bleed out spots. And you might be wondering, what's a bleed out spot? Well, a bleed out spot, you've seen them. Do you know at the end of a movie when someone dies, like it's a hero or an anti-hero, and tragically instead they get shot or stabbed, and they take a couple of steps in the snow or the rain or somewhere, and then they look out in front of them and it's beautiful. It's this contrast between hyper-violence and absolute beauty and tranquility. It's stunning. And these videos have like a point of view kind of thing, as if you've put your hand in the snow and you look up and it's like this beautiful forest in front of you, or a sunset or a sunrise. The ones that work best for me are the ones who have thick atmosphere, so a sunrise looks nice, but really it's got to have a fog or a snow or a rain. And I think it says a lot. You know, when we're talking about Dylan Thomas and raging, I think this is at the end of the rage. I think that these bleed out spots feel like the end of the rage that Dylan Thomas is talking about and how those people in those comment sections were perceiving it. Plenty of the people in those comment sections, though, it was the majority, just took it as raw emotion and actually went with that loss. But there was always an undertone of raging, moving forward no matter what. And if it helps a person, I'm not knocking anyone. It's more that it can be used for other things. And I think it does get linked to these bleed out videos. These videos where you feel like you could feel the soundtrack to your life. Instead of, in my poem where I say being surrounded by the mundane, to me that's often true beauty. The mundane was your life. The mundane is the things that are there. You do not have to go out in a blaze of glory, but instead appreciating the stuff around you. The stuff that's comfortable. When the comfort that comes from these bleed out videos is the implication of hyper-violence and then utter tranquility of the soul. That's what it feels like to me. So I've written a poem. It's very short, but I think that it describes these in a way that you might understand without even looking at a picture. This is the feeling I get from a bleed out spot video, or the end of a movie when a character is tragically succumbing, often to the inevitable. The bleed out spot. Give me thick fucking weather. Fog, snow, rain that could drown a man if it wanted to. Next to a path I've never walked and never will. A quiet place for my soul to stain the earth and evaporate in the sunrise. And like the dew on the grass, by the time it gets to midday, it was like it was never there. And I think that's why the bleed out spot has a sort of beauty to it. Now I hope every time you hear that poem now, do not go gentle into that good night. If someone's using it in the opposite way, maybe someone, not tragically, but just like me, watching the rugby and hearing them blast out, do not go gentle into that good night. At the same time, the entire organisation has been done for incredible amounts of horrific misogyny. It has been gutting one of the biggest cultural assets of this country. I think it's fucking funny that they would send everyone out and try and get everyone hyped up with something that they don't even realising is them basically begging, pleading and crying that nothing's going right. Because to be fair, fuck the WIU and what they've done. Absolute tossers. So maybe you'll see something like that in your life, yeah, and it'll give you a good chuckle. And even if it doesn't, I hope that you get more out of that poem now than you did. Because it should never take away from what it was. It's still as beautiful as ever. I just think that gives an extra dimension that is utterly stunning. Right. I've been Matt Nome. We'll speak soon. Next week, it's been a bit later, it's come out this week, hasn't it? Life has been fucking mental. Next week's going to be a fun one. Should we just say that? Next week I think the future in a part of South Wales that people absolutely despise, but I think is fucking amazing. Yeah, let's say that. Wicked. I'll keep it a bit vague, because if I commit too much and I change my mind on something, and I've said a take here, I'm buggered, aren't I? Right. Have a good one. We'll speak soon. Ta-da.